Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me if you're here with me live. If you're watching this recorded, thank you for watching. Just to get us kicked off today, just another quick reminder that if you have any questions about anything, please email me as soon as you have your questions. Those of you who have asked me questions via email and stuff in the past, you all know that I'm typically pretty good about responding and answering questions relatively quickly. So if you have any questions about anything, just send me an email, let me know as soon as possible. That way we can get things handled so you don't have to wonder. But today we're probably going to have a bit of a shorter live stream because it's about social media and using social media to connect and communicate. And I find, by and large, a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this module, I don't really need to talk to a lot of you about, right? Like, the vast majority of people are using social media and using a lot of social media. And like me just saying, oh, this is what Facebook is, doesn't really do a whole lot of good to, like, teach you anything. So we're going to cover some of the topics really relatively quickly, go through a lot of different stuff today, and try to get to some interesting things about social media and how we can utilize social media, both in our personal lives and potentially in our professional lives as well. But social media is kind of the general term used to describe an online tool that we use to generate content or interact with other people. Right? So there are a lot of different types of sites that fall under this category of social media. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, tons and tons of different types of sites. Some of which you might not even think of as being social media. Things like YouTube, you might not think of that as social media, but it is social media. These are social media sites. The purpose is creating content and connecting with people. A website that provides a platform for people to connect and exchange things with, we call that a social networking site. So when you hear the term social media and social networking, it's kind of the social media is the content and the social networking are the connections between the people. And if there's a site that's making those connections possible, we call that a social networking site. So we have the ability to connect and share with other people. But even more than that, and we see it a lot today, is we see this... we see business activities being taken care of on social media or on social networking sites. There are a lot of businesses on social sites these days, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, whatever you like to do. There are businesses out there that either have a social networking site for that particular business or that are doing a lot of advertising on these social networking sites toward potential users of their products. So either way, we're seeing a lot of business activities being conducted on social sites in the modern era. Facebook's one you probably all know about. Facebook's probably the biggest social site these days. It began really back in 2004. It actually began a little bit before that. But really it became a thing in 2004. A little bit before 2004, it was open to just students of Harvard. In 2004, it opened up to just university students. I remember I got my first Facebook account in those accounts back in 2004, because that's when that was during the time when I was a student at the University of North Carolina, and they just opened it up to allow for university students having that .edu email address to get a Facebook account. And then it was opened up to everybody, like it is today, in 2006. And in actually 2018 was the first year that Facebook became the very, very top of the list, ranked first in a worldwide survey of active social networking users. So the first time that Facebook was kind of the biggest thing on the planet, believe it or not, wasn't up until 2018. There are other regional sites that were bigger, but Facebook kind of saw its boom really within the last 5 years. And we can talk about what we do on Facebook, but I mean, I figure you all probably know that. I don't really know that I have to go into that. Posting updates, sharing links, commenting and liking posts. The common, usual stuff. Some of you are probably familiar with LinkedIn. If you're not, you should be familiar with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional profile. So LinkedIn is what we call a professional network, where users connect with business contacts. And the goal here is to try to help you in your career or help you get a job. You can kind of see it like Facebook, but like a professional Facebook. So whereas you do a lot of personal things on your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page isn't for anything personal. It's just for things that would be related to the career that you're in or the career that you want to be in. And LinkedIn is actually technically older than Facebook. It became a site that was available to the public back in 2003. And it has a ton of members. Over nearly 600 million members these days, I believe, is the number there. A lot of recent college graduates creating LinkedIn profiles. One of the best. And so here with LinkedIn, I could just give you some few bits of advice when it comes to LinkedIn. Because again, this is about being a professional and trying to find a job or trying to advance your career or make career contacts. And so essentially what you do when you're creating your profile here is you're essentially building out what is kind of a version of a resume. And one of the best parts about your LinkedIn profile is it has an area for skills. And it's in the skills area where you can really do a lot in terms of making yourself searchable. One of the things that you can do is when you go on to job websites, things like Glassdoor and Indeed and Monster, and look at these jobs that you might be interested in applying for, whether they're in healthcare or business or whatever field that you're interested in. You'll see that a lot of these job postings of careers that you might want to have will all list what we call KSAs, or knowledge, skills, and abilities. And the skills are things that you need to be able to do in order to do this job successfully. And your LinkedIn profile has a place for you to put skills. So one of the things that you can do is look for these skills that these employers are looking for out in these job postings. And if you can do those skills, put those skills in the skills section of your LinkedIn profile. And the big thing here is that's going to make you searchable. Because we know based on the job postings that people are looking for those skills. Right? So if I'm a potential employer and I want somebody who knows how to do X, Y, and Z, and I go into LinkedIn and I'm searching for people who know how to do X, Y, and Z, and you have X, Y, and Z in your skills section, you're going to come up in my search results. You're going to be on my list. I'm going to see you. And that's going to make me more likely to reach out to you. So by kind of building your LinkedIn in such a way where you're building it smart, you can actually work to kind of help make some employers come to you. Now, obviously, that's not good to use as the only strategy in trying to find a job, but it's definitely good to use as a secondary strategy in addition to your standard job hunt. Filling out this LinkedIn profile and making sure that you put a lot of keywords on it so that when people are searching for their business needs with those keywords, you come up in their search results. Real pro move there when it comes to the job hunt and using social media to try to help you in the job hunt. And if we have some time, we'll get there a little later in the presentation. We'll talk about some more ways that you can use social media to help you out in looking for a job. WhatsApp is somewhat less common. Some of you might use WhatsApp, but I highly doubt many of you use WhatsApp. It's an SMS and phone calling alternative app. One of the great things about it, I've heard from a lot of people who are in the military or who are military families, will use WhatsApp so that they can call their loved ones stationed overseas, and it won't cost them anything because you can call app to app for free or text app to app for free. It's just an alternative to utilizing, your standard phone services, your standard text messaging and standard phone calling. WhatsApp is another platform that's owned by Facebook. Facebook owns a lot of the internet. I mean, when we look at the big social networking sites in terms of Web 2.0 nowadays, the majority of the internet is owned by 5 companies. Right? If you're not Facebook, Google / Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, you're probably not much, Because in addition to the Facebook platform, Facebook has WhatsApp and Instagram and a couple other things out there. But it's pretty great to allow you to make these encrypted. Another good thing, and it's another reason why military families might use it, is that it's encrypted, meaning that your communications are secured end to end. So it's less likely to get compromised, which is another good thing about WhatsApp there. But speaking of Instagram's another one. Instagram's a photo sharing app, as many of you know. I'm sure a lot of you probably use Instagram. We can actually kind of see a generational divide in a lot of our social media profiles and a lot of the way that people use social media. We could see a lot of older people. I think about my age maybe is around the, around the lower limit, around the early to mid 30s where, it's the lower limit of the real Facebook people. And then younger than that are the more visual social medias. We see more people on Instagram and things like Snapchat, TikTok, various other things. But Instagram was started in 2010. It was acquired by Facebook a few years ago. I don't quite remember when, right off the top of my head. I want to say it was maybe 2017, 2016. Maybe a couple years earlier than that. But it was one of the fastest growing social platforms. In just a couple months after it was launched, it already amassed over 1 million users back in 2010. And really, Instagram has kind of set a lot of the trends that we've seen going forward in other apps and things. Photo sharing, filters, all that sort of stuff. having filters in your photo or video based app nowadays is ubiquitous, like they all have it, and it was really kind of first initialized in a social setting with Instagram. Speaking of filters, Snapchat. Snapchat really came up with the augmented reality filter. That was one area where Snapchat pioneered that the rest of them sort of followed suit. The augmented reality where it's, live mapping things to your face as you're, moving your head around in the video. Snapchat was devised in 2011 by a few, I believe, Stanford University students. And most of the Snapchat users are on the younger side, between the ages of like 12 to 24. I think about half the user population are younger. And Snapchat falls into a category of social media that I like to call ephemeral media, just because, when you send a Snapchat, it doesn't sit out there available for people to look at forever. It's out there for a limited amount of time. Now, that doesn't mean that it's wiped away from the internet. It is still on the internet. Let's make that clear. Especially if you have like AT&T, right? The AT&T data center in Kings Mountain. If you send some Snapchats over AT&T, there's a high degree of likelihood that whatever you've sent is cached on a server somewhere in the AT&T data center in Kings Mountain. The internet never really goes away, even though it looks like it's only there for a few hours. So that is something to be aware of when it comes to things like this ephemeral type of social media, where it's here and then it's gone. Is that it's never really gone. Reddit, Reddit's one of the more popular social news sites nowadays. Users submit content, whether it's articles, self-generated content, videos, whatever. And then users police the quality of the content on the site by upvoting it or downvoting it. Good users are awarded points in the form of karma. You can basically find any type of interest that you want on Reddit and follow topics in that area, and be a part of a community with those interests. I commonly will go over to like programming Reddits and look at all the latest developments there. It's pretty interesting stuff. Then we have those are kind of our social networking sites. From there we have other types of social media sites, which are media sharing sites. These are sites that allow us to publish content, distribute these things efficiently, and kind of do some file sharing with videos and audio files and podcasts. And these are all things that I'm sure you've used as well. I'm not even really going to go deep into them because these are probably even more used than the previously mentioned sites. Things like YouTube, which I believe YouTube was first started back in 2006. The very first video on YouTube, just as a little bit of fact, was a video titled "Me at the Zoo." So if you're ever on Jeopardy and that's one of the final Jeopardy questions, that's the answer. The first video on YouTube was called "Me at the Zoo." But YouTube is owned by Google, although it's technically owned by Alphabet. That's one of the weird things. Like, Google started a parent company called Alphabet, and Alphabet is kind of the conglomerate that owns all of the little tendrils of what were Google properties, but really it's still just Google, right? Like, I don't have an advanced business degree to understand why they would do something like of that nature. I'm sure they had a good reason. But one of the big things that we see on video sharing sites like YouTube are the concept of viral videos. One of the things that we do in the social media class, at least in my version of it, if you take my version of it, is we discuss what makes a video viral. And there's a lot of interesting things that can go into that. You know, a lot of the things that we don't think about when it comes to social media and how well things work on social media are things that have a big impact on what things do. You know, things like what time of day was it posted? What did the thumbnail look like? What, you know, how, where, what platform was it posted on? Was it shared anywhere? You know, all these types of things. You know, they all attribute to how well a social post does and whether or not it goes viral. Flickr, I'm not sure if Flickr is as used anymore. Flickr is a photo sharing site. It was owned by Yahoo, I believe. I think nowadays most people will like just upload their photos to Facebook and just use that as their primary means of photo sharing. But prior to that really taking hold, Flickr was the thing, and I believe photographers by and large still utilize Flickr as a platform for photo sharing, just for means of like professional photo sharing. Pinterest, you might have used Pinterest before. You know, it's just this. Pinterest is kind of based off the idea of a digital bulletin board, you know, or an inspiration board. You know, you can kind of save pictures or articles or ideas or kind of whatever you want to a digital board to kind of save as inspiration for later. And you can also browse other people's boards. But as most of you probably know, it's, you know, it's well utilized for like craft projects and recipes and like project ideas, things of that nature. Spotify. You might not think of Spotify as being a social media site, but it is. Especially, you know, one, because I mean, you as an individual can create an artist's account and post songs to be played on Spotify. But also, other than that, you know, you can create playlists and share them with other people. So you do have these social interactions. You know, as many of you know, there's a free account and there's a paid account. And there are some differences in what you get between the two. Everybody knows about the meme of the Spotify ads, I'm sure at this time. You know, hate listening to ads? Da, 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 da. But, you know, Spotify is kind of becoming ubiquitous. I think a lot of people are using it these days. It's also becoming a big means for artists for revenue generation. I believe somewhere around 30 million tracks, 30 million songs are available to be streamed on Spotify, which is a ton of music. Blogging, you may or may not know about blogging, because blogging is kind of a lost art form nowadays. A blog's basically a journal or some kind of you know, personal news account, if you will, that's posted to a website with the most recent entry kind of at the top. So you go to the site, and the first thing that you see is the most recent thing that the individual has written. The collection of blogs on the web is called the blogosphere, because we have to give everything a cute name. Writing a blog is called blogging. A person who blogs is called a blogger. And it's actually a portmanteau, or the combination of two words, of web and log. And we actually take this concept of blogging and we pushed it forward into other areas. For example, a vlog, which is incredibly popular now on YouTube to do vlogging. But a vlog is a video weblog, or just a video blog. Another area in which we carried the idea of blogging is into microblogs. And this is where we see things like Tumblr and Twitter. Twitter's kind of interesting because it's changed a great deal from where it started. It was originally intended just to be like a messaging platform. Some of the guys that started it were into like EDM and like rave kind of culture. And so they wanted a way to be able to like help them find each other at these events. So they wanted to build a platform where they could send one message that would push out to a bunch of people at one time without having to address it to a bunch of people at one time, or have like a group chat or whatever. And so that's kind of where the idea of Twitter came from. So as you well know now, it's really different from that in terms of how people use it these days. Let's talk about, really quickly, some social media strategies in business. I think this stuff is really interesting. We see it a lot. And we don't really, we might not really even know what's going on. But one of the biggest things about social media use in business these days is the fact that you and me and everybody else, kind of the thing that I mentioned at the beginning, everybody is on social media. Right? So if I'm a company and I want to acquire some kind of new customer, I want to go to where the customers are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my marketing, push it towards social media. Because that's where my customers are, and that's where my customers are interacting. And we actually have a special term for this. We call it SCommerce. It's not a term you hear thrown around a lot, but it is something that happens. SCommerce, or social commerce. This refers to the utilization of social networks for buying and selling products. Something that's really common on Instagram nowadays, right? Like, if you use Instagram, you see this stuff all the time where it's like, oh, swipe up to buy, or click here to learn more. And that's outside of even just regular advertising. And then even more than that, we see other things built into this that are based off of it. Things like user ratings, referrals, reviews, and then building communities around a product or a brand. And that's why there are people who their entire job is to be a social media marketer and to handle a brand's image on social media. Because this stuff takes so much time and it's so all-encompassing. Because when you think about it, let's just take one idea here and think about the idea of user ratings. There's a concept in psychology Oh, what is it called? What's it called? The peak end rule. There's a concept in psychology called the peak end rule. And the peak end rule says that people judge an experience largely based on how they felt at the peak and at its end, rather than the total sum or the average of every moment of the experience. So think about your experiences with businesses in terms of that peak end rule and what really piques your emotions the most. If you go somewhere and you just have a fine experience, it's not going to really move the needle. You're not going to be inspired to go write a user rating, to go do a user rating or write a review online. You just had a fine experience. An experience has to be particularly good, amazing, if it's going to move that needle at all. But what's more likely to move you when something is bad? When you're slighted in some way, when you have a negative experience with this peak end rule, even if it's only a brief negative experience that's a part of an otherwise generally okay experience, your overall impression of the experience is going to be burn it down. I don't want it. This was awful. And so that's why a lot of the user reviews and ratings that you see online, they'll skew negative. Because if I'm not, and that's also why you see companies incentivizing and asking for good reviews. Because they know that there's really no other way that you'd probably write a good review because of that reason. Like you'd have to have a really incredible experience to write a good review otherwise. So this is a part of the social media and social commerce process. And this example here with National Geographic, this is a part of community building and getting you to become a part of the community and to take some kind of action. We see the post here says, how are you resolving to reduce your single-use plastics in 2019? Take the pledge today. So that post there, that's directed at you, at the individual. How are you resolving to reduce your single-use plastics? Now, they could have just posted what they have in the image here. That's a good enough post. Nearly 1 million plastic beverage bottles are sold every minute around the world. That's a lot of plastic use, you know? But that's disconnected from creating a sense of community. That's disconnected from user involvement. So insofar as saying, I want to create a community around my brand, I want people to be involved and interested and active in my brand, what's one of the things I'm going to do? Well, I'm going to ask them a question. I'm going to say, what are you going to do to reduce your single-use plastics? That's why YouTubers do it too. If you've ever watched a YouTube video and they say, tell me in the comments below what your favorite flavor of gummy bear is, or something like that. They're trying to engage the community to drive activity because that activity gets them a better placement in the social media atmosphere. That plus the fact that an active community can be mobilized to do more. Right? So we see stuff like that. We also see stuff like this with Lowe's Home Improvement here, where they're just giving you this idea. Fresh veggies and herbs are at your fingertips with a DIY vertical garden. Click the link in the profile to get started on your planter project. So, what are we doing here, right? Like we're giving our users information. But more than that, we're creating this connection with something that our users are interested in and our brand. Like we see this and we say, oh, I like that herb garden. I wonder how I can make one of those for myself. Oh, they have a link here. Oh, I can buy all the things that I need at Lowe's. Let me go to Lowe's and get all this stuff. So we see that kind of stuff in action. And it's really quite interesting. And, there's, in a way, it's kind of a bit of manipulation. And, you might have heard of the Social Dilemma film that's on Netflix. It's a relatively new film. I think it's been out for maybe a month now. Really good watch if you've got some time to watch it and you have Netflix. Take some time to watch that. Talks about some of the darker side of how social interactions are designed and technology is designed. And I think it's important to kind of put things in context with technical ethics in that sort of regard. So I'm going to recommend that to you all. But let me try to get you just a little bit of information about leveraging social networks to help you get a job before we stop today. And I know we said we'd probably go a little short and we've ended up going a little long, but that's okay. That's just life. I hope you've gotten something good out of it today. So let's talk a little bit about leveraging social networks for your career, trying to get you a job. Because we said that social networks have businesses on them nowadays. And that's a two-way street. And that's something to remember, right? So one of the things that we want to do is we want to ensure that we have a nice, clean digital footprint. That when businesses are searching for us, if we apply for a job, right? That's one of the things that we have to start thinking about nowadays, is that if we apply for a job, one of the things that the hiring manager is going to be most likely to do is search our name in Google, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever, to try to find out information about us. Now, whether or not that's good or bad, that's neither here nor there. They're going to do it. You may as well expect it. So you might want to just expect to sanitize your digital footprint if you've been prone to putting things that you might not want other people to see on your social media. However, around that, you can start to build yourself a personal brand. Your experience is a combination of everything you know and everything that you've done. There is no one else on earth with the exact same experience as you. And so that is the basis for your personal brand. Start talking about what you know in relation to what you want to do in your career field. Start talking about what you can do. Create those LinkedIn profiles. Put stuff out there. Talk about career-related stuff on your Twitter. Put stuff out there. If you're in a career where you can make projects that you can share on the web, do that. But just like you, and when your employers are searching for you, not only will they not find any of the bad stuff because you've sanitized your digital footprint, they'll find all this good stuff where you've proven that you can be an asset to the company. And that's a good thing. But it's also a two-way street, right? Because, these companies can search you, but you can also search these companies. And that's something that you should be doing as well. So that not only you can be more prepared and you can know something about these companies before you go into an interview, but you can also just know if you want to work there at all. Right? Like you might just not even want to work there. One of the things that we can get an indication of as we are working with social media sites with businesses is that we can get this indication of what life is like at that company. We can get an idea of the work culture at this company, whether it's a place where we might want to work or where we might not want to work. If we want to work there, then we'd have a better insight of what that means. If you go on there and you see they're having lots of team building exercises. Maybe they do some kind of team building thing once a week. And you're like, oh, I don't really want that. I don't really like talking to other people. I don't really like messing with that. It doesn't really seem like it'd be good to me. I just want to be able to do my job and go home. Then you might want to look somewhere else. Or maybe you say, well, maybe that'll bring me out of my shell a little bit. Maybe that'll be a good place for me. Who's to say? You. So with that being said, that's all that I have for you for today. I know we went a little long, and I apologize for that. But I hope that you got something out of the class for today. I tried to throw a few things in that you might not get in your text material to, make it a little bit better. But I'll hang out in the chat for just a couple minutes just in case anybody has any questions who are here watching with me live. If you're watching this later on, or if you come up with a question later on and you want to ask, just feel free to send me an email once again. But that's all that I have for you this week. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.